Aloha, everyone. This is Catherine Payne, Chair of the Hawaii State Board of Education. It is 1:31. As a reminder, as part of the response to the threat of COVID-19, Governor David Ige issued a 16th supplementary proclamation dated November 23, 2020, suspending Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 92, Public Agency Meetings and Records, to the extent necessary to enable boards as defined in Section 92-2 to conduct meetings without any board members or members of the public physically present in the same location, among other things. The Board of Education will be holding virtual meetings until further notice. The public can still call in or log on to listen to board meetings live. The live broadcast is audio only for both board members and the public. Video of the board members and any presenters will not be broadcast. An image of the agenda will be shared on the screen. This is to reduce the amount of bandwidth that this meeting takes up and to preserve the quality of the audio. Board members, please make sure to raise your hands in WebEx to participate in the discussion and wait to be called on before speaking, and to mute yourselves when you are not speaking and take your hands down. State your title and name when you participate so members of the public know which board member is speaking. And if you lose connection or experience any technical difficulties, contact board staff immediately. With that, we are calling the meeting to order at 1:33 p.m. We will first take public testimony on the agenda items. Members of the public who signed up to testify must be logged on to WebEx using the same name you used to sign up for testimony. Board staff will call on you in the order in which you signed up to present oral testimony. Board staff will unmute your mic. Please test your speakers and microphones before your name is called to ensure that they are working. Instructions on how to do so can be found on the board's website. If you're not audible because of technical issues, you will be muted and the next testifier will be called. Testifiers will have a 4-minute time limit. State your name, organization if applicable, and agenda item you are testifying on. A chime will sound when you have 30 seconds left and a second chime when your testimony time expires. You will be automatically muted once your allotted testimony time expires. Right. Board staff, please call on the testifiers.
Susan Piccola Davis, Sherry Nakamura, Gay Kong. Susan, can you hear me? Susan Piccola Davis. Final call for Susan Piccola Davis. Sherry Nakamura. Sherry, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Sherry. Mahalo. Proceed.
Aloha, Chair Payne and members of the board. My name is Sherry Nakamura, Director of He'i Coalition. I'm commenting today on action items 5F and 5G. Our understanding from the last general business meeting for this item was that the board approved 2 of the 3 priorities provided by the superintendent, and that the superintendent needed only to provide SMART goals for these priorities, and that the board needed only to comment and approve these goals. We support the board adhering to the simple plan of agreeing on SMART goals at today's meeting, without the need to convene a permitted interaction group. If, however, the board decides to convene a permitted interaction group for discussions on the superintendent priorities and strategic plan indicator targets with the superintendent, we strongly urge the board to make the permitted interaction group's discussion and notes open to the public. Stakeholders have the right to listen and comment on these discussions and specific goals and targets of the superintendent so that we can all better help support our students and the system. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify.
Gay Kong, followed by Julie Reese Oda. Gay, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Good afternoon.
Proceed.
Yes, I hope I'm doing this correctly. I already testified earlier today in regards to the operating budget. Do you want me to do that again?
You may testify. It is on the agenda. You may proceed.
Okay, yes. So good afternoon, board members of the Board of Education. I am the principal of Clayolo Elementary School. The recent budget cuts in both the WSF and the SPED department, it can be best described as crippling. And to balance that budget, we will ourselves need to cut 2 teacher positions. And the end result will leave us with 4 teachers to serve 7 grade levels. Yet still with those severe cuts, we will not have funds left over for instructional materials, sanitation supplies, or even toilet paper. It might seem a bit strange that we may need to ask our parents to bring in cleaning supplies and toilet paper as part of their child supply list. Our SPED budget is no less severe. We'll be cutting 2 educational aid positions, which leads us to 2 EAs to cover grades preschool through grade 6. For our SPED teachers, we will have 1 SPED teacher to serve grades K to 6 and 1 SPED teacher to serve our preschool SPED population. Again, even with making these adjustments, we will still fall short of $70,000 to balance our budget. And while the district has offered to help us with this deficit, they also have reduced funds and may not be able to cover this deficit. Given that we do serve preschool students from many schools outside of our geographic area, it is very critical that our preschool remains open. At this point, you may be asking, have we looked at other areas in which we can make cuts besides classroom teachers? And a summary of our classified and non-classroom teachers are as follows. We have a half-time health aide who's now very critical in this time of COVID. 2 custodians who also carrying the extra duties of continuous sanitation of all the classrooms. They also help us with monitoring students, doing temperature checks, and helping with school dismissal. Of course, we have our 1 SASA who we always know that their knowledge and ability in handling budget, personnel, and policy is indispensable. And 1 office clerk who also serves as our meal count clerk as well. We have 3 non-classroom teachers, but we're going to lose 1 of those with all certainty with the cuts. That will be our academic coach. That leaves left our librarian and student support coordinator, which is 1 position combined, and our counselor and website coordinator, which is 1 position combined. Our current cafeteria staff serves 3 schools, plus our grab and go patrons. They are very stretched thin. And for myself, I currently act as the tech coordinator, the Title I coordinator, the grab and go runner, the recess monitor, and also soon to take on that role as academic coach. A final note is I want to say that I don't mean to seem oblivious to the shortage in our state revenues. I certainly expect that we will need to learn to do with less. But I ask, have we done a thorough inventory of our DOE resources prior to passing on the severe cuts to our schools and our students? Have we truly examined the role of each DOE position in directly supporting our students' learning and well-being? Are there positions that we can do without? Can we move our experts who are no longer working in the classrooms back to classroom positions where the learning takes place? Thank you very much for allowing me to provide this testimony today.
Julie Reyes Oda. Julie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Julie Reyes Oda. I'm a math teacher at Nanakuli High and Intermediate School and also the mother of a special education student in the public school system. I'm providing comments about agenda items 5C, the budget, and 5F, superintendent's evaluation. When reviewing the MEM 1 budgets, there are 2 issues that I want to highlight. First, I understand that we are a service-driven organization and the majority of our budget is spent on salary. So I get that salary cuts will be a major source of reductions. The second issue is that it was mentioned that only 6% of the budget is spent outside of the schools. Let us not forget that 6% of our budget is still significant. To find a solution, we need to fully focus on supporting our core mission, which is educating students. I teach at a school, and I'm hearing principals announcing numbers of how many teachers will be cut. For example, I heard recently Kapolei Middle was 16, Ilima was 14. I would challenge the board or department to conduct a sensitivity analysis to determine what positions affect the department's core mission of teaching and learning. If positions will be cut, it should not be done arbitrarily and should be based on maintaining the core functions without protecting the sacred cows. Let me explain what I expect the sensitivity analysis to accomplish in regards to positions. This is really a simulation on what would happen if we change certain variables. I'll give you a simple extreme example. Let the variables stand for positions, something like X is the number of teachers and Y is the number of admin. Would the core business of teaching and learning function if we had all teachers and no admin at work? Yes. On the other extreme, would the core business of teaching function if we had no teachers and all admin at work? No. That should determine what positions you keep. Again, that was a very simplistic example of what I mean. There are many, many variables to include when you do an analysis like this. You don't prove you value teachers because you say you do. It's based on what you do and how you treat us. It's going to take trust to get things moving. And we need to figure out what are the enduring values that we're going to stand for when this pandemic is over. In regards to the superintendent's evaluation, honestly, I cannot see why we're wasting so much time on one person's evaluation when teachers have been talking and questioning about their EES evaluation too. But let's not be coy. Dr. Kishimoto, your contract is almost up. Do you want to stay or are you leaving? And the board, you haven't posted the job. Are you intending on extending her contract or hiring someone else? The pandemic uncovered nothing new. It was always there. Dr. Kishimoto, do your job, take responsibility, and stop blaming others. Your other option is to quit and be done with this. We have heard time and time again that you are empowering the principals, yet it seems the principals are given shadow directives and do not have all the freedom to choose like they are presented to have. You cannot take $250,000 in pay from Hawaii taxpayers and produce nothing in return. Lead from the front. Let's start first with a voluntary pay cut from department leadership before you ask for reductions from the rank and file. Thank you.
Linda Elento. Linda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Am I connected this time? Is it still light?
Much better.
Oh, now
Linda,
it's better?
yes, it is.
Okay.
Your testimony
Okay.
time begins now.
Okay, thank you very much. I testified earlier today, and I think I missed something regarding the operating budget is what I'm testifying on. First of all, I'm Lindy Lento. I'm a parent. I do have a special needs, quote, son with disabilities who wants to access education like anybody else is afforded to. And because of his disability, he does need extra support and behavior support. And there is an annual student conference that's actually in our Hawaii Revised Statute. And that's an event he wanted to go to earlier this year before the pandemic. And after lots of effort, denials, and being given different types of restrictions on attending, which would have resulted in not being able to attend fully to the conference, in addition to an extra several $100 expense on my part to provide such accommodation. I was able to contact Legal Aid Society, and they had a special project just for students like mine, or children. They didn't realize that there was such a unique need for children with disabilities, although my son is protected under IDA for special education. He's also protected under Section 504, which gives him access and equal opportunity to different programs that other kids are available to access in the education system. Anyway, I wanted to refer to an article I had recently written. It's on the legalaidhawaii.org website, and if you go to the drop-down menu, there's some few articles regarding the impact, legal need impact. Scroll down a little bit, you'll see my son, Jason Lento, kind of explaining how just basic civil rights against discrimination due to disability for our students is a legal battle. It's a legal issue. And we can't stand to be able to, as a state, to be able to disregard the needs of our students, of any students disability. Anyway, coming down to this, to my testimony, based on what I heard this morning um, at the committee meeting, I was really surprised. I did miss how the budget got to the governor's desk and how it was up to the financial committee this morning to discuss it, only to be told ahead of time, my understanding, that they wanted big changes to it. It's not going to happen. And the budget, because it's already on the governor's desk, that one will stand. So most, if not all, the committee members voted yes, with either hesitancy or whatever that particular word is, which doesn't make any sense because they are elected by the governor. Doesn't the governor want their full input? And if instead, if we're just keep relying on that last meeting, we're going to discuss it later. We're going to discuss it later. And it made me only think that maybe at the SEAC committee, Special Education Advisory Council, the CAS meetings, complex area superintendents, do they all have the same input? Well, we know we can discuss it later, so let's just pass what we got. That's a big concern to me, and for the last almost 15 years, I've been testifying and working with the school system. Anyway, I did lose my train of thought. It just makes me wonder, actually, for the last many years, I have the same thought, is that we keep waiting and waiting and waiting. Anyway, I appreciate your listening to my testimony, and I appreciate the opportunity for my son in particular, after many years of being told no, that had some success, and he's getting a curriculum online, and it's not the one that everyone didn't like, which, to be honest with you, as a parent, first thing I heard about it, the one that guys voted said no more, that I forgot what it is, Estellus, or anyway, I can't remember the name of it. I just simply went online. I looked at 2 example lessons, and I knew right then and there that wasn't a no, that wasn't a go for my kid, much less I don't think anybody else. So anyway, I know I've got more I could share. I appreciate your listening and making operating decisions or budget decisions important, but we can't keep waiting and pushing it off, knowing we're going to have more discussion. That's not acceptable from the public. So thank you very much. Bye now.
Chair Payne, that concludes oral testimony.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I have been collecting some thoughts as I've listened to the testimony and to the last committee meeting, which most of you also heard regarding the budget. We have a lot of public interest in this, and I do understand that everyone is very concerned about the severe cuts that are reflected in the budget proposal that was passed by the committee. First, I want to emphasize that this is not the last of the budget discussions. What is reflected today is the work of the department in collaboration with complex and school leaders. The board finance committee chair and vice chair have also been included in the discussions. The numbers they were working with were provided by the governor's budget and finance staff, and they were told the levels of cuts that had to be made. While this is the first time we've discussed this budget, I want everyone to understand that this is the first stop where we are involved. Budgets are also being developed in the House and the Senate. And because of the news changing every day about what resources we will have to work with, those budgets will also change. And I appreciate the comments that were made about becoming advocates and making sure that legislators do understand what the priorities are. We have been very clear that we wanted the least impact on classrooms as possible. However, the cuts are so deep that it's impossible not to affect that. We do need to be very specific, and I appreciate the principle that stepped forward from Keolu to describe exactly how that's going to impact her school. The teacher from Nanakuli also shared some similar kinds of um, uh, information. It's very frustrating for all of us. And one of the things I still get frustrated about is comments about the department being so top heavy that it's about to tip over. We really need people to understand that cuts are being made at state and district offices, and cuts were made even before this time. If you go back and look over the years, the amount of people assigned to states and district office staff has not increased in percentage, and we are the lowest in the nation in overhead costs. Primarily because we are able to consolidate services and as one state agency. We could put all of the money from state and district offices in the schools and we would still have drastic cuts. So we really need to look at what at those offices are critical services for schools. Some of the things they're doing are helping take the load off principals and teachers. So I agree that folks need to understand what those services are so that they are not thinking that they're just fat in the system. The reality of what is happening to our state and to our schools is devastating. I personally feel despair more than hope on most days as I think about who will suffer the most over the next several years, because this is not 1 year that we're talking about. The governor has talked about at least 4 years of this level of cuts. Those who will suffer the most are the poorest children and families who are already suffering. And they've all consistently been reflected in our achievement gaps. Poverty is the single biggest correlation to lower achievement. And layered upon this are other issues related to poverty: hunger, poor health outcomes, family trauma, domestic violence, among many others. We had hoped to begin to turn this around through more programs in early childhood education, more family support before students even enter school, and more intensive programs to remediate the deficiencies caused by poverty. I shared some of the national research on this at our last meeting, and there's plenty of local research confirming this. Schools can't solve all these problems, but we've tried to do a lot. I have seen this over my more than 45 years connected to public education in Hawaii, and like some of the testifiers, I have never seen such a bleak path ahead as we have now. Some are holding out hope that more federal funds may come in to address the worst gaps in our services to children. And I have this hope too, but I'm a realist and we must work with the budget we have, and everyone needs to understand that there will be enormous holes in our service net. There must be some private sector and grant funds that can help, possibly. And I know that the department is aggressively looking at grant opportunities. Individual schools may have parent and alumni groups that can help fill some of the gaps. These are important supports, but they won't change the ability of the larger system to provide the needs for all children in all schools. It will not just be the children in poor communities, it will be choices affecting programs for all students in all schools. However, our poorest children will not have the family resources to make up for some of the losses. They won't have music or art lessons. They won't have after-school sports that require fees paid by parents. This is the equity gap that our schools have been trying to close. We have even more families now who have slipped across the line into poverty during this pandemic, and we will have fewer resources in our schools and our state to address them. I was also heartened by the sincere offer of support at the legislature by Representative Capella. It would be wonderful if the legislature identified new revenue streams, but we cannot spend resources we don't have or that we hope will be given. Over many, many years, I have been part of efforts to identify new revenue streams. They've been pursued and they have not succeeded. The bigger picture as it has always been, is how much do we value as citizens of this state and prioritize our public schools. It's not just the educators, but the broader public. We give or deny resources according to our values. This is the reality, and we cannot have these discussions without understanding that context. This is a terrible time for public education. All right, we're going to move on and approve our minutes of October 15th. May I have a motion to approve the October 15 general business meeting and the October 15th executive session minutes? Board Member Bakarsi.
Aloha, Board Member Bakarsi. I move to approve the minutes of October 15th for the general business meeting and the executive session.
Thank you. May I have a second of Board Vice Chair Uemura?
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Okay, we're now to item 4 on our agenda item. We will have the reports of board committees, board members, and the superintendent. For the first, I would like to call on Committee Chairperson Kenneth Uemura to provide the Finance and Infrastructure Committee report on the meeting that was held earlier today.
Thank you, Chair Payne. And in order to process this more efficiently, I'm going to report and also recommend on the action item, if you don't mind. The committee met this morning and reviewed 4 action items: action on R&M priority list, action on the priority criteria, action on the DOE operating budget, and action on the DOE CIP budget. The committee had a good discussion, especially around the operating budget. And so what I'd like to do at this point is report our meeting and also report that the FIC committee is recommending approval of all 4 actions.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Uemura, and who's also chair of our FIC committee. We now move on to the report on the findings and recommendations of the investigative committee tasked with developing the board's policy positions for the 2021 legislative session and drafting any legislative reports due by the board to the 2021 legislature. Regarding the policy positions for the 2021 legislative session, the committee ultimately found that the board's policy positions should focus primarily on preserving resources and maintaining the quality of learning for students. As to the legislative reports, the committee found the board's only legislative report due to the 2021 legislature is the annual report on the charter schools. The committee will be recommending that the board adopt the policy positions and the charter school annual report. Both of these are attached and in your packet, Exhibit A and Exhibit B respectively. Okay, so we're not going to be deliberating this or take action on the investigative committee's findings and recommendations at this meeting, but we will do so at the next meeting. So if you could please review all of that, and then we will take action on that at our next meeting. Moving on to item 5, which is board action on the Finance and Infrastructure Committee recommendations that were brought forth by Chair Uemura. Is there any thing additional you would like to say about this, Vice Chair Uemura?
No, thank you, Chair Payne.
Is there any further discussion from board members about this? Okay, I don't see, let me double check. Don't see any hands up. So if there is no discussion, there was quite a robust discussion during the committee meeting. I will call on you to individually vote. Again, you are voting on the equitable allocation of facilities resources. And I will start with Board Vice Chairperson Kenneth Uemura,
Aye.
Board Member Asher,
Aye.
Board Member Bakarse,
Aye.
Board Member Cox,
Aye.
Board Member Fallon,
Aye.
Board Member Namau,
Aye.
Board Member Takeno, and Board Member Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion has been approved. Next, we have action on the Finance and Infrastructure Committee recommendations concerning the Department of Education's priority criteria for executing capital improvement projects in accordance with Board Policy 301-10, equitable allocation of facilities resources. I would again invite Committee Chairperson Uemura to present the committee's recommendations.
Thank you, Chair Payne. The committee, just to reiterate what I had reported earlier, the committee has recommended approval for all four items. And so for this item on the priority criteria, the committee recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing none, again, that was a very robust discussion in our committee meeting. We're ready to vote. I will be taking a roll call vote, starting with Board Vice Chair Kenneth Uemura,
Aye.
Board Member Asher,
Aye.
Board Member Bakarse,
Aye.
Board Member Cox,
Aye.
Board Member Fallon,
Aye.
Board Member Namao,
Aye.
Board Member Takeno,
Aye.
and Board Member Voss.
Aye.
And motion has been approved. Thank you. Next, we have action on the Finance and Infrastructure Committee recommendations concerning the Department of Education's operating budget for the 2021-23 fiscal biennium. I would like to invite Committee Chairperson Uemura to present the committee's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair Payne. The FIC committee recommend approval of the Department of Education's operating budget for 2021, that's 2023 fiscal biennium.
Okay, and I will note that we did have several, including myself, who voted aye with reservations. And I have been reminded that we do not have a process for voting with reservations. So it will just be noted in our minutes as voting aye. The legislature does have that process, but we do not. So with that, is there further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will take the vote. Board Vice Chair Uemura,
Aye.
Board Member Asher,
Aye.
Board Member Bakarse,
Aye.
Board Member Cox,
Aye.
Board Member Fallon,
Aye.
Board Member Namau,
Aye.
Board Member Takeno,
Aye.
and Board Member Voss.
Aye.
Okay, the motion has been approved. We are now going to have action on the Finance and Infrastructure Committee's recommendations concerning the Department of Education's capital improvement projects budget for 2021-23 fiscal biennium. Again, I would like to invite Committee Chairperson Uemura to present the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair Payne. The FIC committee recommends approval of the Department of Education's capital improvement projects budget for the 2021-2023 fiscal biennium.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions from board members about this one? There being none, we are ready to take a vote. I will be taking a roll call vote. Board Vice Chair Uemura,
Aye.
Board Member Asher,
Aye.
Board Member Bakarse,
Aye.
Board Member Cox,
Aye.
Board Member Fallon,
Aye.
Board Member Namau,
Aye.
Board Member Takeno,
Aye.
and Board Member Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. This motion has been approved. So that completes the motions that are coming out of committee. We are now going to item E, which is action on the designation of board members to an ad hoc committee concerning the 2021 legislative session. We talked about this at our last meeting, and this is the day we take action. My memorandum describing my proposal is included in the meeting materials. I'd like to note that there is an error in my recommendation because it references policy positions adopted at this meeting. As I explained earlier, the board cannot take action on the investigative committee's recommendation at this meeting in accordance with Sunshine Law, but may do so at its next meeting. Therefore, I recommend the board approve the assignment of board member Lynn Fallon, Keely Namau, Bruce Voss, and myself, with me serving as chair, to a permitted interaction group, which is the ad hoc committee, to present, discuss, or negotiate any policy positions the board adopts for the 2021 legislative session, with the authority described in my memorandum through and until the governor's last veto deadline for the 2021 legislative session, but in no event later than December 2, 2021. Before discussing this item, just remind you to raise your hands and wait for me to call on you. So is there any discussion on this item? You can get a preview of what we will likely be recommending as policy positions by reading the memo, but we won't take any action with that. But your vote to approve, I would need a motion and a second on this. Board Member Takeno?
Thank you, Board Chair. Board Member Takeno, I move to approve the motion as stated in Section 2 recommendation of your December 3rd, 2020 memo.
Thank you. And Board Member Bakarse?
Board Member Carsey, I second the motion.
Okay, thank you for the motion and the second. I will need to call a roll call vote, beginning with Vice Chair Uemura,
Aye.
Board Member Asher,
Aye.
Board Member Bakarse,
Aye.
Board Member Cox,
Aye.
Board Member Fallon,
Aye.
Board Member Namau,
Aye.
Board Member Takeno,
Aye.
and Board Member Voss.
Aye.
Okay, that motion has been approved. Thank you very much, and thank you to those who are agreeing to serve again on this committee. Next, we have action on changes to the timeline of the superintendent's evaluation process for the 2021 school year. Note that what the board decides to do on this will affect how it approaches the next and final agenda item. My memorandum describing my proposal is included in the meeting materials. I've laid out two timeline options, one with an investigative committee and one without. I recommend approving timeline A in my memorandum, which is the timeline with the investigative committee as the revised superintendent evaluation timeline for the 2021 school year. So again, before we begin discussing this, I need to have a motion. May I request that, please? Board Member Voss.
Move to approve as recommended by Chair.
May I have a second, please? So we can discuss it. Board Member Fallon.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So we will now begin our discussion. Is there anyone who has any thoughts on this? I'll give you a moment. Both of these last two memos are a little complex. Board Member Takeno?
Thank you, Board Chair. I respectfully disagree with the Chair's recommendation on timeline A. I prefer timeline B. Some of the reasonings behind it is going to be discussed in the next, I guess, action item, but I think it sets a bad precedence when we're trying to, I guess, recognize the leadership during situational events. It then opens up to the fact that does other DOE employees have that opportunity too? I think I'll recognize that. Leadership is leadership, and we base off our evaluation on how a leader will respond to any type of challenges. So I, would say that we keep on going round and round and round with agreement on this eval, and I thought we had somewhat of an agreement at the last meeting when we kind of agreed with the SUP's proposal on the two superintendent priorities, and what we were just asking for was basically provide some SMART goals that align with it. I think going and having a pig and delaying this process even further, which, again, not even be fruitful, we're just kicking the can down the road. So again, I do not support the chair's recommendation, and I would prefer with timeline B. I yield the floor. Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments? I will say that the superintendent has expressed very strongly that this is something that she would like us to do. And I do feel that any kind of evaluation, in order for it to be effective, needs to have clarity and trust on both sides. And I am concerned that we don't have that right now. Board Member Bakarse.
Aloha, mahalo, Chair Payne, Board Member Barkarsi. I too will be voting no on this motion. I do also believe that we definitely need clarity and understanding on both sides, but it seemed as if we had gotten to some areas of agreement of how to work this out, and given the times that we're in, I don't think prolonging this would be very productive. So I will be voting no on this. Mahalo.
Anybody else like to say anything? Board Member Voss?
Thank you, Chair. Let me respectfully disagree with my fellow board members and why I support this motion. Many board members, myself included, have expressed frustration with the superintendent and her team at various times during this year. But as Keely said so eloquently in the last meeting, the superintendent and her team have worked very, very hard during this extraordinary time. And I believe that the superintendent deserves a fair evaluation. And she can't have a fair evaluation if she's not clear on the goals and priorities, and if we're not clear on the goals and priorities. And yes, part of the responsibility for the lack of clarity falls on us, not just her. And so I think we owe the superintendent, no less than any employee of this department, a fair and comprehensive evaluation. I don't see how the PIG would delay things. The timelines are essentially identical. The evaluation date is identical. It merely gives the superintendent an opportunity to provide clarity to the committee chairs. They would then report. The overall board would vote on those priorities and the evaluation criteria. And again, I think it's only fair. I yield.
Thank you, Board Member Voss. Other board members? Board Member Uemura?
Thank you, Chair. I too would be voting no on this. I prefer B, and for all the reasons that Member Takeno and Bakassi had mentioned. And, just in response to Member Voss's, having a pig or not having a pig does not preclude the superintendent from having a fair evaluation. One is done in public and one is done with the committee members. And we've talked about this now. This is the third meeting we're going through this. And to be honest, I can't understand why we're doing this. It's very simple. We've asked certain things to be done. It hasn't been done. And requesting a pig, it really does not, it's not fair to the other members of the board and the public because it's done with four different people. Although I understand from your memo that the pig, any pig discussions can be made available to the public and to the board. So what's the sense of doing a pig? Let's just do it in the open session. And I recall Member Takeno at the last meeting said, all the members are here, let's just get it done. But now we're falling back to, I was frankly surprised that this is on the agenda again. And so I'll be voting no. I think timeline B is the appropriate timeline, and let's just get it done. Thank you.
Any other board members? Board Member Nama'u?
Aloha, Board Member Nama'u here. I can understand the angst that everyone has, and perhaps the frustration is that we're going to have, this is up again on discussion. However, I think that we need to give people some opportunities here. And if this is important to the superintendent, if there's opportunities, I have trust in our board chairs, our different committee chairs to have this discussion with the superintendent. I think that's the least that we should do and provide. So I'm going to vote yes for the motion.
Any other board members have a comment or a question? Board Member Takeno?
Thank you, Board Chair. Again, I just have to respectfully disagree with this recommendation. Having the pig, like Ken said, it will be public anyway. We could have this discussion at any given time. I guess what's really concerning to me was that I thought we had direction and I thought we had an agreement at the last board meeting. So to see this on the agenda was quite a surprise too. I think, it should have been discussed or possibly even at another meeting to, I guess, kind of flush out the reasoning why. I don't even think we even got any consensus on this. So, I know that's why it's being placed on the agenda, but it was just taken by surprise for me, as well as I think a couple of my other board members. So again, I do believe that it's an unnecessary step. We can actually do it in public and we should proceed. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Board Member Cox?
Thank you, Chair. Board Member Cox here. While I don't need to have more meetings, I do feel that the superintendent should have a chance. She's asked for this. And actually, I thought I remembered that we talked about this at the last meeting. I don't know that any decision was made, so I'll be voting yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Cox. Board members who haven't weighed in, do you have any thoughts or any questions before we go to the vote? Board Member Fallon?
Thank you, Chair Payne. I started on the board in July, and this issue keeps recurring. And it seems that it's been at a stalemate. It also seems the board's directives have been clear around the need for smart balance goals as it relates to at least the first two priorities. I don't know if there was agreement around the third priority, but it's clear. So it doesn't seem that there's that much more work needing to be done. And so I think this is something, although I hate to have it on the agenda again, that we can handle very easily if the superintendent presents her smart balance goals as we have asked for. So I'm going to be voting no.
Okay, anyone else? If not, then I guess we will call for the vote. And I will start with Vice Chair Uemura.
No.
Board Member Asher.
No.
Board Member Bakarse.
Nay.
Board Member Cox.
Aye.
Board Member Fallon.
No.
Board Member Nama'u.
Aye.
Board Member Takeno.
Nay.
And Board Member Voss.
Aye.
Okay, there were 3 ayes and there were 5 noes, so the motion has not been approved. So the next item on our agenda related to setting up an investigative committee, and does seem like that is moot at this point. I'm getting a message from the staff. Let me check. Okay, I need to wait a minute. Excuse me. We're going to pause here for a moment while I get some more information. Okay, what they're saying is we still need to vote on the timeline because we're already passed. And so timeline B is the one without the investigative committee. So I need a motion to approve timeline B. Board Member Bakarse.
Aloha, Board Member Barkarsi. I move to approve timeline B as described in Board Chairperson Catherine Payne's memorandum dated December 3rd, 2020 as the revised superintendent evaluation timeline for the 2020-2021 school year.
All right, Board Member Vice Chair Uemura.
Chair Payne, I second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt timeline B. Is there any discussion on this? To clear my chart here. Any discussion from any of the board members on this one? Seeing none, I will again do the roll call vote. Board Vice Chair Uemura.
Aye.
Board Member Asher.
Aye.
Board Member Bakarse.
Aye.
Board Member Cox.
Aye.
Board Member Fallon.
Aye.
Board Member Namau,
Aye.
Board Member Takeno,
Aye.
and Board Member Voss.
Aye.
Okay. All right. That concludes our meeting. There's no further business on the agenda item, and we are adjourned at 2:26.